Welcome into episode 2 of Bleav and Hills Hoops here on the Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by Bet Online. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson from Tobacco Road Sports Radio, joined by my co-host, RL Bynum from the Tar Heel Tribune. You can catch us on youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio for the video portion of this each week. The audio portion of this, Bleav Podcast Networks, you can find us there. If I'm not mistaken, they're still building our page, so it should be up probably by this time tomorrow, but you can check this out there. Tonight, special guest, one of my favorite players in Carolina history, or one of my favorite teams, actually, and that'll probably be a topic for another day. Tyler Zeller in the house. What's going on, Tyler, man? How you doing?
Not much. How you doing?
We're good, man. Happy to have you. It's a victory Thursday. The Carolina Tar Heels defeat 7th-ranked and previously undefeated Oklahoma in the Jumpman Classic down in Charlotte last night, 81-69, I believe was the final. I saw people saying, well, why are they playing here? Why are they playing there? It's kind of de facto home game for Carolina when we play Charlotte, Greensboro, these places. And I just have to mention Duke has lost in both of those places before. I don't know if we really have.
But I love the little tidbit there.
Yeah, that's what we're about over here at Bleav in Hills Hoops. We can kind of get cut loose a little bit. I was going back and forth with a Duke fan on Facebook last night. He was like, we're playing in Madison Square Garden tonight. Y'all playing in Charlotte. I was like, we just played Madison Square Garden like last week. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, Duke has lost the national championship in Charlotte. They've lost a first-round game in Greensboro. Can you imagine if Carolina lost a national championship game in Charlotte?
We'd take some heat for that one for sure.
Just implode. Like everything we thought was going to happen if Carolina and Duke ever met in the Final Four, that's what would happen if Carolina lost in the Final Four, Natty, in the state of North Carolina. I can't even wrap my mind around it. Both of these guys, RL and Tyler, were in Charlotte last night at the Spectrum Center. They'll give their thoughts on the game, roster players. We're at a point now, gentlemen, where we need to start talking about RJ Davis and All-American status, because this dude has gone off. I just saw a stat where he's the first player, I think, since Tyler Hansborough in 08-09 to lead the Tar Heels in scoring in 7 straight games, which is insane when you think about the people that have come through since 2009 to now, that no one had done that till RJ, and he's just looking really good. I want to give him some props and talk about him. Of course, a look at the career and life of Carolina Center Eric Montross, who passed away at the age of 52 this past weekend. Gone too soon, 52 years young. We'll talk about that. Both these gentlemen had interactions with him, of course. Tyler being part of the Carolina family, RL reporting on the team. And we'll just go through memories and things that we thought of Eric. And everything I've seen has been so nice in terms of people's interactions with Montross and how he treated people. So we'll go to that too. And that'll lead us to something that Ty and Eric have in common, which is their numbers up in the rafters in the Dean Dome. I get asked so often, how do you get up there? Like, what do you have to do to be up there? And there's different distinctions between what's up there and what's retired or whatever. So we'll explain all that for you too. So we got a loaded show tonight. Let's just get into the thoughts from last night's game. Now, Tyler, I know you were on the Tar Heels Radio Network calling this game with Jones Angel. How was that? Because I know Jones very close with Eric. You know, Eric was normally the color commentator there, and they sat together for, I can't remember how many years they did it. 8 years, 9 years?
18 years.
18 years. So how was that? And I listened to the first half of it on the radio coming back from the Frank Spencer Classic last night in the car, and you sounded good. And how did it feel calling that game, knowing that Jones and Hubert and the coaching staff were all kind of having to go through this with what occurred with their friend Eric Montross on Sunday?
It was a challenge. It just happened to be that I was scheduled. So Marcus Ginyard, Pete Chilcutt, and I have been filling in for Eric Montross, obviously with the hope that he would be back next year or even later this year. So I was scheduled to be at that game anyway. It was a challenge, being friends with Montross and having known him and the great man that he was. It was definitely a challenge. And Jones is phenomenal. He's always first class with the way he carries the show, the way he talks through it all. So part of the reason I agreed to do it was because of how good Jones is. But yeah, last night was very challenging, just getting through the segments with talking about Eric and how the person that he is and what he brought to life and just every interaction he had. So it was definitely a challenge. But, thankfully the game went well. It was fun talking through the game and just enjoying the game as much as we could through the scenario that we were going through.
Yeah,
Yeah, today I got a chance to listen to the first segment of the broadcast, and that was an emotional segment for Jones Angel and for Adam Lucas, and they both got emotional about it. I mean, I spoke to Jones about 20 minutes before they went to air and just talked about it with him. And I knew it was going to be a tough broadcast for him, and it certainly was, I'm sure.
Well, it sounded really good, and it helped that Carolina pretty much controlled the game from start to finish, and they're starting to come back around to what we expect from Carolina basketball. This is what 2023. Like we've kind of, as a fan base, we've kind of gone through it. Like the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, like the past 5 years or so. Right before COVID. Well, really, I've been on record saying that to me, 2019 was the peak of college basketball up to this point. Because everything since then, COVID and then everything else, NIL, the transfer portal, everything else, it's kind of changed what college basketball is. And it's hard to keep up with teams. And I've always loved college basketball. For me, especially being a Carolina fan since birth, was that I could watch a kid grow. Like I watched Tyler grow from breaking his wrist freshman year to being, what he became senior year. And that team, that's why I was so happy when we got you on, because I'm like, that team is one of my favorite Carolina teams, the 2012 team. That's one of my favorite teams of all time. And I keep a list of who are the top Carolina teams in my lifetime that should have won a national championship. And I have you guys at number 3 behind Michael Jordan's 84 team. And to me, that's like the number 1 team that should.
Yeah, that's hard to beat that team.
Yeah, them. And then I think actually I might have been 2016 team that lost to Novo in the buzzer beater and a natty. And then I have you guys right there at number 3. And it's weird that the number 1 and number 3 were all affected by an injury to the point guard, wrist injury, broken wrist right there towards the end of the year. And it kind of affected everything. So
we really felt like we had a chance to win it. Kentucky was the team that we felt like we matched up really well with, but that would have been the game that I think it would have been a great game.
Yeah.
I think Kansas obviously we ended up losing to them. It was a tough game, but I felt like we could get over the hump if we'd had Kendall, kind of making everything go. And I'm not saying we would have blown out any of those teams, but we felt really good about beating everybody. And then Kentucky, I felt like was 50-50. It would have been a dogfight.
We wanted Kentucky. I remember the fan base. I remember we wanted.
That was the year we lost to them too at their place.
Yeah. We wanted them again.
Yeah.
So we were really.
We were up 1 with like 30 seconds. We turned it over.
Yeah, but I mean the beauty of being a fan of North Carolina basketball is that more often than not you're going to win more than you lose, and you're going to enjoy the good times more than the bad. And I will say, Hubert, watching that game last night. And the roster and the way he was working the roster, a couple of things crossed my mind before I turned over to you guys from what you saw on courtside. I had a lot of friends that aren't Carolina fans, but were just watching from afar. And they were like, well, can Hubert coach? Like, he's only playing 6 players and all this other stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, those aren't his players. Like, he didn't really, you know what I mean? Like, he only trusts like 6 of them. It's pretty obvious at this point. He's only playing 6. So, and then when you go to the next year, after they make the run, same thing. He's really only playing 6 or 7 guys. And I started looking at him like, well, most of these guys are left over from the previous regime. Like, Hubert really hasn't had a chance to build a roster of his own yet. This is the first roster Hubert's built that's a Hubert Davis Carolina roster. And it's almost like he took a Dean Smith roster blueprint and had it labeled out in terms of, this is what you need to build a Carolina team. You need a quick point guard that can get off his own shot and can distribute the ball. He's got 2 of those. You need a shooting guard that can get a shot off anywhere at this point. That's RJ at this point. You need kind of like a J.R. Reed type of power forward that can back a guy down, can get his own shot. That looks like it's Harrison Ingram at this point, really a 4 at that point. The 3 needs to be another wing that's kind of long, stringy, can play defense, can shoot threes, can dunk. Usually it's the athletic guy that's in the starting 5. And then you got a center. You got somebody that's back to the basket, can rebound, double-digit rebounds, get you double-doubles. You can play through them. It's Armando. And then he filled in the bench. So you've got dudes in certain spots that know their roles. In the past 2 years, it felt like people didn't know exactly their role and they were constantly switching them around. Let's start with you, RL. Watching this game last night, Carolina wins. I wanted to stress that their defense, they held the Sooners to 69 points, which was a season low, and 40.4% shooting from the floor as a team. and they led pretty much start to finish. What were your thoughts sitting there in Charlotte watching the game and watching the Tar Heels play maybe their most complete game? I don't even know. Like, at least this year. It's been a while though since we've seen them play like this. What were your thoughts while you're watching them play? Or am I just being super fan here?
Well, I mean, that was I haven't seen energy like that all season really, and really you got to go to defense. They were getting in the passing lanes, getting deflections, and being more aggressive. Kentucky was the aggressor on Saturday, but last night it was Carolina. I mean, they did a good job of shutting down Oklahoma's motion offense, which can be pretty potent. They kept the Sooners from getting in the middle of the court and just were disruptive. And I would point off the bench, Seth Trimble and Zayden High were really good defensively. And the whole team played well defensively. And I don't think Oklahoma had seen anything like that this season.
Seth Trimble's been lifting weights. Like, obviously, like, dude, it feels like every time he's driving, he's trying to dunk on somebody. Like, I've seen kids like that. I've played with kids like that where it's like, okay, something happened in the offseason where he just decided to take his aggressiveness to a different level. Next time they play, watch him. If he gets a chance coming to the lane, he's going to try to like embarrass somebody. And I'm like, how tall is Seth Trimble? Like 6'1", 6'2"? Like, what? How tall is he?
Yeah, but he can fly. I don't know how tall he is, but he can fly.
It's like, he had one last night where I was like, ooh, he was about to like cup it on this dude. And the dude kind of got his body in there before he could get it out. What were your thoughts calling the game, Tyler? Because deep down, you had to kind of feel like, I know from watching the team from afar the past couple of years, a lot of us Carolina fans were like, even the run the past 2 years, and when they went to the Natty and then came back in their preseason number one, most Carolina fans I came across were like, yeah, but this is still the same team we watched for like 4 months last year. It's literally the same team. So what did you feel now watching this roster and what they've done so far? Because I think they've had the toughest non-conference schedule in America up to this point.
Yeah, they're definitely up there. They're definitely probably top 5 for non-conference schedules. But they looked great last night. Like RL said, it just the ability on defense to take them out of their pick and roll, to keep them out of the lane. Oklahoma was so good at getting into the lane, and really they struggled inside. We forced them to shoot shots. They had a couple guys who, Ole being one of them, that hit a bunch of threes. But really, other than that, we handled them very well. I think the next step for them is, about 7-8 minutes, we kept hanging in that like 8 to 10 range or 8 to 12. And we just got to put a team away rather than they got it down to, I can't remember, it was 5 or 6 with about 3 minutes left, and we were able to put them away then. But really kind of just putting the game away, putting it out of reach, putting it up about 15 to 18, going down the stretch. And but really, I mean, other than that, I have no criticism. I think they did a phenomenal job keeping them out of the paint. We can do a little better job rebounding, but part of that was our pick and roll coverages. We were trying to recover back to those bigs, which is very difficult to get those rebounds, especially when, Armando's only 6'9", and, he's not a high flyer. So
yeah,
it's a little different than some bigs recovering back. So, but no, it was a great game. Fun to watch. Hopefully we can continue that over into ACC play now.
Are you guys worried about?
I'd like to ask you. I've heard a couple of former players in podcasts kind of be critical of the switching because it's not the fighting through screens like you used to do under Roy Williams. What's your view of all the switching on defense?
I think I like it. I think Armando needs to be kept out of it most of the time. There's been a few games against some of those smaller non-conference teams that switching was the right call because they didn't have a big. Their big's a 6'6" guy who wants to shoot threes anyway. So the switching makes sense then. But like last night, they got a big who just wants to get to the rim. So I don't like switching in that situation, but switching the 1 through 4 any other time, I like it. Cadeau comes into question a little bit, RJ a little bit too, if you have a bigger 4 who's going to post up, but usually they can get the guy passed off or double the post and get the ball out. So I think we saw that a little better last night. I think they're continuing to get better and better at that pass off and being able to cover the paint even better as time's going on.
Are you guys worried about Armando and his production? Because I see all the talking heads are worried about it, but I don't really feel like worried about, how many touches he gets. And it seems like they're like honed in on he needs to get the ball. He needs to get the ball. And I'm like, they're playing really well. Like, I don't know if he needs to get the ball. I get that they came back, but I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because I keep hearing it over and over again that they need to basically force it into to Armando, but they seem to be playing well without having to do that. That's what they were doing last year.
Yeah, if this was last season, I would say this is terrible. But this season, there are more offensive weapons out there. So I don't think it necessarily runs through Mondo this season as much as it did last season, and they don't need it to. Hubert Davis said before the season he wants Baycott to dominate, and he's done that some. But I just don't think this team necessarily needs that on a game-by-game basis.
Yeah, they're really well built. Like the roster, when you look at it, I love the depth. Some of my favorite Carolina teams from the past were ones where Dean or Roy could go 10, 11 deep. And by the time you got to conference play, he had whittled it down to a hard 8, hard 9. But you kind of knew if something happened to one of those guys, you knew you had another 2 guys over here that could play if need be. And it feels like he's built that because you've got dudes like Jalen Winters and Paxton Wojcik that are coming off the bench now, but they know they have certain specific defined roles when they're coming into the game. They know what they're doing. Everything seems to fit. And that's weird for me as a fan to watch it because I'm used to it not fitting in the past couple of years. So when I watch it, it's almost like putting on an old pair of slippers. Like, this is okay. This is what I remember from when I was 6, when I was 14, when I was 20, when I was 30. Like, this kind of feels like Carolina basketball. And kudos to Hubert because Hubert kind of went, this is not the most forgiving fan base in America. And for him to go through being, a half away from winning a national championship as a rookie head coach, coming in behind a legend like Roy Williams, to go through what they had to go through last year and miss the tournament entirely, to hit the portal and to rebuild this team into what he felt like would be the best option. It's just amazing to me what they've done. They weren't even picking Carolina to win the ACC, but from what I've seen so far, I think they have a great shot to win the ACC. I know Duke won last night too. They beat Baylor, a good win at Duke North, which is basically Madison Square Garden. I'm going to pick on Duke a lot in this podcast.
I think we're both good with
it. But no, I don't know. They seem deep too, but it feels like we're all in this new era where the one and done Duke type teams that they were having, they're not going to necessarily have those anymore. Shire's going to bring in some dudes, some 5-star kids, and he's already been doing that. But he's going to filter it with grad students and experience, and it's going to be an older team than what K had the last probably decade that he was coaching. So Carolina, Duke, Virginia's always got that defense and sniffing around. I see Clemson, Miami. Those seem to be the heavyweights this year, but I think Carolina's going to have a whole lot more to say than what people thought at the beginning of the year. RJ Davis in this game, 23 points, 5 of 9 from 3, led Carolina in scoring for the 7th consecutive game. I was saying earlier before we got on, I saw that RJ, or maybe it was right at the beginning when we got on, RJ's the first player since Tyler Hansborough in 2008-2009 season to lead Carolina in scoring for 7 consecutive games. So that's been 5 seasons now where it's the first time it's happened. Carolina moves to 8-3 overall. The Sooners dropped to 10-1. Thoughts on RJ?
He's also the first one before this game to have 26 or more points in 5 straight games since Charlie Scott.
I heard that on the call last night too, and I was like, man, so Charlie Scott. So no one's done that in 40 years?
Yeah, I don't know the exact year, but it was the 70s. So
yeah, that's 50 years. Yes, that's crazy. If you think all the scores have come through Carolina. Thoughts on RJ from what you remember freshman year, RJ Davis coming in to where he's at right now? I remember Dean used to always say the biggest leap for college basketball players typically the summer between freshman and sophomore year. But it feels like RJ had his leap between sophomore and junior year. And now he's carried that on into this year where it feels like this is not Armando's team. This is RJ's team and Armando's on it. Like, am I wrong in that assessment, or how does that feel for you guys?
I'd agree with that. I think, Caleb Love was phenomenal for us, especially back in the championship run. Last year, the team just was different dynamics. But I feel like RJ is benefiting from Caleb had the ball a lot. So now without Caleb, there's a lot more time for him to have it. But RJ plays so well off the ball, and Cadeau wants to pass so much. So it just fits really, really well. Sometimes RJ doesn't have to create as much for himself. He can just catch and shoot.
Yeah.
Something he hasn't had in the past as much. So, and then with Armando, I think he needs to get the touches, but he needs to stop turning the ball over on the double teams. But more than that, I think if he can just be content, he did it one time, the late Ingram 3. He just took one dribble, saw the double team, and threw it straight out. He really wasn't trying to score. He wasn't trying to do anything. He just did a great job seeing that double team coming and throwing it out. I think RJ, all those guys are benefiting from him getting the ball, so much attention being on him. And then RJ now is making, the 1-3 he made, it was a desperation 3 at the end of the clock, but it was a step back. The guy's in his face and nailed it. That's RJ. And then, they were making the run late. RJ hits that 3. So, he really is carrying our team. He's hitting those threes in big moments, and he's doing a phenomenal job for us.
Yeah, like you said, when the lead was down to 5, RJ made the big 3, and that really helped fend them off. But he's just doing so many. There was one play midway through the second half. I think RJ was on the opposite baseline, and he sprinted down the court and swiped the ball away from Rivaldo Soares.
Yeah,
I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that was just amazing, the hustle down the court, and it's just so impressive. And he's elevated his game from last season. He's a 3-level scorer, and then he doesn't have to distribute. But last night, 5 assists, no turnovers. That's impressive. And
and that's on top of Oklahoma double teaming him for the last 16 minutes.
Every
they chased a double team and made him throw it out.
I'm trying to think of guards that are playing better than him in the country right now. Who would I pick right now? Like if I was at the park and I'm picking, all these dudes are standing out there. Like, is there another guard I'd pick before RJ Davis? And
he's in contention for sure.
He's got to be, right. He's got to be contention for
playing really, really well. But yeah, he's right with him.
He might very well be in contention for ACC Player of the Year going right now as it stands. I was thinking All-American, first team, second team, whatever, but somewhere in there, because we've all been looking at it as Armando being the one, and Armando very well might still just end up second team, third team, whatever. But RJ is like the engine right now, and he's just so confident with what he's doing. Dan O, who's watching, says RJ is an All-American. Tyler, you're one of my favorite Tar Heel legends. Merry Christmas, folks. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this, each one of these, we do them live so you guys can interact with us. If you want to ask any of us a question, if you want to give a comment, if you want to leave an opinion on what you're seeing with Tar Heel basketball, men or women's basketball, you can just do it on the Facebook watch page at Tobacco Road Sports Radio's Facebook channel. Just type it into the comment section there, or you can type it in on the YouTube feed, whether you see it on Tar Heel Tribune or you see it on Tobacco Road's channel. If it's live, you can type it in. It'll pop up in the bottom like Dan's there, and we'll try to answer them as we get to them.
And regarding RJ, by the way, he didn't even make first team preseason All ACC. How silly does that look at this point?
Who were the guards that made that? So we can kind of point out.
I don't remember.
The only ones I remember were Armando and Filipowski.
Yeah. See, and I ain't got a problem with Flip. Like I saw a little bit of Duke Virginia's ACC championship game. I was on press row last year because it was in Greensboro Coliseum. So I went to the championship night and watched the first half of it. Then I realized I was like, "This is Duke and Virginia. I'm just going to leave. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to be here for this anymore."
They're good.
Yeah, it hurt too much. Like, but I saw Kyle up close. He's pretty good. I got to admit, Filipowski's pretty good. And
he's a guy who, if he could get rolling, Duke could get. Obviously they've struggled a little bit this year. Baylor's their first win.
Yeah.
If he gets rolling, they'll start making threes, playing in all 3 different levels. He struggled a little bit, but he's still averaging, I think, 19 points or 17-9. I guess I looked it up earlier, but
I think it's chemistry with them. If they can figure out their chemistry and learn how to close games like they did last night against Baylor when they went on that run, they start doing that, and then Duke's going to be Duke. They're going to be dangerous. But
it's hard though when you got 10 people who want to play and just think they deserve to play.
Yes,
kind of what we had last year a little bit.
Yeah,
guys are frustrated, and you're just trying to find. Whereas this year, I feel like we got a little more role acceptance. Obviously people want to play more. Everybody wants to play the whole game, but we got a little more. Everybody kind of knows their role, knows when they're going to get in and all that. So
I kind of feel like too, it's almost like it's not almost even important who starts for Carolina. It's almost more important who finishes the game. Like, because a lot of times you'll see Seth Trimble's out there at the end of the game, or he'll have a 3-guard lineup out there with Cadeau, Davis, and Trimble at the end of the game, with Baycott running around and probably Ingram like out there. Like, that's usually who he ends the game with, which is fine. Like I said, I don't know what Seth Trimble did over the offseason, but he clearly was lifting weights, so he's way more athletic than he was. I know that JP Dakota was his cousin. He's got it in his blood, all that stuff, but he's starting to look like him a little bit. And then Cadeau, I did not expect him to start this early. I was perfectly fine if he didn't, but once he put him into the starting lineup, I think that's when they really took off. Like, they really started to figure out how to do this and go and run this Carolina fast break and all this other stuff that they've got going on. But we'll keep a RJ Davis watch going for All-American status and see if he can keep this up here.
I think ACC
at the end of the game, Hubert was swapping in offense for defense, Trimble and Cadeau. So it seemed like several times in the last 2 minutes. So to talk about who's in at the end of the game, well, he was swapping them off a lot.
That's good stuff. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, thank you, Hubert. Thank you.
I think RJ going into ACC play will be interesting, because those first couple ACC games, obviously we got FSU, which is a kind of odd one to play early. But as those first, we got road, I think, to start.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a challenging start, but if RJ can continue to roll into the beginning of the ACC, I think he's got a chance.
All three of those ACC games are quad 1 road games, Pittsburgh, Clemson State. So that'll be a really good test.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be interesting to watch them, especially after we come back from Christmas break. Let's get into our memories, our thoughts on the Carolina family lost a member this past weekend. Eric Montross passed away, 52 years young, passed away from cancer. For me personally, just a perfect example of Carolina basketball. Like, when you think of Carolina basketball, you probably think of a couple of names right off the top of your head. And for me, Montross is probably one of those 5 or 6 because of the era that he was the center in. They won a natty in that era. And just that time period, the early 90s when he was playing, I tell people all the time, one of my favorite teams of all time, even though I'm a Carolina fan, was the Michigan Fab Five, and what they kind of represented to me being a black male and the culture in the early 90s, and what they kind of changed the game. They were UNLV 2.0, and UNLV is one of my favorite teams of all time. And I had to go to school, and I had a lot of friends that were Duke fans, and they were ribbing me in the 93 final about who are you going to root for, because you got Michigan, who we know you love, but this is Carolina. Like, this is Dean. He's trying to get another ring. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I really did. I was a sophomore in high school. I was so conflicted. And when the game started, I wasn't rooting for either one. But as the game went on, I felt myself going to the Carolina side. I'm like, okay, this is home. Michigan is fun, but this is short. This is fleeting. Like, this is going to disappear in a year or two. This is where I'm going to be when I'm 40, when I'm 50, when I'm 60. It's a Carolina fan, and I want Dean to get this one. I wish it hadn't happened the way it did in the end because of my Michigan fandom of that Fat Five team, but either way, yeah. either way. And Chris Webber still probably suffers from that to this day. Like, people still think of that timeout and that with it. But with Montross, man, the first memory I think of is the bloody Montross game. Like, literally, my mind immediately flips to 92, Carolina Duke. This is like peak Carolina Duke. You get Leitner, Hurley, Grant Hill, Thomas Hill. I hated all of you. Couldn't stand, especially Bobby Hurley. Couldn't stand any of you. Like, my friends that were girls had trapper keepers with Christian Leitner on them and stuff. Like, it just so, like, I hated that team. And Montross got hit a couple times in that game. Busted the back of his head. I think he had a cut over his eye or under his eye or something. And there's the iconic shot of him at the free throw line getting ready to shoot. And he's got like some blood dripping down from his face or whatever. I want to say Carolina won that game, if I'm not mistaken. Too. It was at the Dean Dome, if I'm not mistaken. So those thoughts for me, I think more about what he meant to the Carolina program in terms of helping Dean get that second ring, being such a key part of that, and what ifs, because the next year after they won the Natty, 94, they bring in Jerry Stackhouse and Rasheed Wallace, and it's like, and Jeff McInnes, and you're just like, what should have been with bringing them in with what, I mean, pretty much the whole team was still there from 93, and they just couldn't figure it out. But That's my thoughts from him. Just a great example of Carolina basketball, a great ambassador of the game. Not just Carolina basketball, but basketball in general. Everything I've ever heard about the man, whenever he would meet somebody, stranger, friend, or whoever, so cordial and friendly and polite and knowledgeable about the game and fandom and things of that sort. So just a terrible loss for the Montross family and the Carolina family in general. But I want to give you guys some room to talk about your interactions with Eric. RL, let's start off with you. Your thoughts on Eric Montross, the player and the person for Carolina.
I mean, he's one of the top centers in the Dean Smith era, right up there with James Worthy, Mitch Kupchak, Billy Cunningham, Bob McAdoo, maybe Rusty Clark. His power moves inside were a big part of the 93 national championship run and taking down the Fab Five. And he was just the quintessential Dean Smith center. But I think we would be remiss if we just focused on basketball.
Right.
Because Andrew Carter on the News Observer wrote poignantly about how Eric developed a relationship with a Durham kid named Jason Clark, who was going through, I think it was stomach cancer. And they forged a relationship. And and that was just shows what a nice guy he was to everybody. I didn't have many interactions with him, but he was always nice to me. And I sat next to him in the East Regional final a couple of years ago because the previous radio team had vacated their position. And I bet Tyler can relate to this as well. I noticed that his legs were so long that he couldn't put him under the table, which me being 5'6" seemed but to sum up, I'd say a great basketball player, but really a better person. And it's really sad that he lost his life at only 52.
Tyler, your thoughts on the passing of Eric Montross, the age of 52?
Yeah, I mean, Eric was a special person to me. We got to know each other in college when I was in college. When I graduated college, we went to lunch and he kind of talked to me through what was coming in the NBA and, don't let the NBA wear you out and all that stuff. And but Eric, I moved back here about 5 years ago, and Eric became a dear friend of mine. We had a lot of things in common. He's a guy that, he's a mentor, but more than that, he was just a really good friend who, anytime I needed something, wanted to talk about something, I'd call him, and, it never failed. He was positive. He was a guy who he wanted to make everybody's day better. He looked and did everything he could every day to make somebody's life better. His I can't say the word, but all the stuff he did with the Children's Hospital at UNC, the Father's Day camp he did. He absolutely loved kids, and there's so much stuff he did through the community, through Rams Club, that I don't know if we'll ever know the complete extent of everything that he did in our community, and just who he was. And to me personally, I mean, he was a guy who, just such a terrible loss. I mean, I talked to him a little over a month ago, and again, just positive, and felt really good about where he was. And, he always had a positive outlook, no matter how bad everything was going on. And it was never about him. You almost had to pull anything out of him. I'm not sure I ever had a conversation with him about basketball. Basketball was,
that's real,
something he did, but it was not who he was. Who he was, somebody who went around the community and tried to help people and cared for people. And yeah, he would talk about, the bloody face game and stuff like that. And he'd have fun with fans, but to those of us that knew him, he was, more of a father and a friend, and just somebody who we all looked up to. We all we all, hope we become like him as we get older. I mean, he's somebody who, is so positive and encouraging. And I've heard so many stories of, just whether it's a media room or somewhere, if you weren't there, he would notice. And even if you weren't, I talked to a guy who was a student in college and now he writes he's a journalist in Raleigh, but he's like, yeah, I wasn't there for a couple games. And, Eric I didn't think he knew who I was. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, where you been? And that's who he was. I mean, he's just a positive person who he just wanted to make our community better. And he spent every day doing that. And I mean, it's a extremely tough loss, more for our community than our program. And it's a big loss for our program. So I think that's a lot.
I like what you said there about him, that basketball was something that he did, but it's not what he was. He was so much more than just the game of basketball. I think it was the perfect way to describe Eric Montross and what he meant to not just Carolina basketball or the school, but the community and as a whole. Like whoever he came across, whoever he touched, whoever heard his broadcasts, like whoever watched him play, got a chance to feel that joy and hear that from him and his voice and his actions and everything. And he's a perfect case of lead by example. Like just lead your life by example. I'm a firm believer in karma. Do right, it'll come back around to you. And it felt like he lived his life that way. So,
and he never talked about anything he did.
Right?
Yeah. Hear about something, and he'd acknowledge that he was a part of it, but he's never one to say, oh yeah, I did this or I did that or I knew that. Like I never heard him boast about one thing in his life. It was always how you doing, it was more about you than it ever was about him.
Well, we'll boast about him because before we get out of here, we wanted to talk a little bit about how you get your number up in the rafters of the Dean Dome. I've had so many people come up to me that aren't Carolina fans, like, so what exactly is the criteria to get up there? Because y'all got a lot of stuff up there. I'm like, well, we got a lot of players. There's been a lot of players that have come through here. That's why they're all up there. We don't just throw anybody up there. You got to do something. Montross actually is up there. There's 2 designations. Tyler's up there as well. Eric got put up there. He made second team All-America. I want to say 93.
I think it was
It might have been the championship year, 93, or 94, senior year. But he made that, and that's how he got up there. Same with Ty here. He got up there, second team All-America, ACC Player of the Year. So here's the criteria. If you're getting honored, you have to win one of or more of the following 5 awards. You have to be either a first or a second team All-America on one of the major All-American teams that qualify a player for a consensus All-American designation. You have to either be an ACC Player of the Year or the most valuable player of a national championship winning team, or an NCAA basketball tournament most outstanding player of a Final Four team, or a gold medalist in basketball at the Olympics, which is something all 3 of us didn't know until I started pulling this up here. Just some interesting stuff. Now, the difference between that and the ones that are honored, those numbers aren't retired. There's only 8 numbers that are actually retired where nobody else can play with those numbers. And to do that, you have to win one of 6 National Player of the Year awards. So basically, if you win National Player of the Year, your number's retired. If you are ACC first or second team, or no, first team All ACC, what did I just say? First or second team All America, ACC Player of the Year. So just making All ACC doesn't put you on. Although I thought I saw, no, that's right. Yeah, so just making All ACC doesn't put you up there. Otherwise, we'd probably have 400 jerseys up in the rafters if they did it that way. But some of the things I was noticing here. So okay, the last one that got put up there was Joel Berry, NCAA tournament most outstanding player for the run in 2017. Justin Jackson's up there. He went up right before him because he first team All-America that year, ACC Player of the Year, and he was the MVP of the NCAA championship game. I didn't know that Bryce Johnson's up there. Marcus Page from your team. Harrison Barnes is up there. Tyler Zeller's up there.
Harrison was an All-American.
Yeah, Harrison was second team All-American and an Olympic gold. When did Harrison Barnes play for the Olympics? It says Olympic gold medal.
It was early.
Yeah, he did win a gold medal, but I think the second team All-America already had him in.
It did.
Yeah, it looks like because I see Olympic gold medal in some of these, but I'm like, okay, he played for the Olympics in the NBA when he was like in year 8 or something. So they must be going back and adding
There
these
must
in.
have been like 1 or 2 people that they were trying to add on that weren't up there that should have been
Yeah.
up there.
Vince Carter, same way. They got him listed second team All-America, Olympic gold medal. They're really Michael Jordan's
I wonder
listed.
if there is somebody who only got a gold medal and nothing else.
I don't see anybody like that. And that's the thing I was looking for. Is there anybody? Well, no. Charlie Scott, Olympic gold medal, first team All-America. No, there is Larry Brown.
Walter Davis would be the only one.
Larry Brown, Olympic gold medal.
Walter Davis was on the 1976 U.S. team that won the gold medal, and Dean Smith was the head coach, and Bill Guthrie was the assistant coach, so he's the only one.
I see. No, wait. Walter Davis, you're right. 73, 77, Olympic gold medal. Larry Brown is on here. He was before him, 60 to 63. He's on there because of the Olympic gold medal only. There's nothing else.
Okay, it's him too then.
Yeah. I don't see anybody else with that. So with just the Olympic gold medal part, but the 8 that are retired, Jack Cobb, this is 1923 to 1926 National Player of the Year. This is back when they didn't even wear numbers. This says his number was NC. So they just had the NC on the jersey, and that was it. George Glomack, I've never even heard. 1938 to 41, he was National Player of the Year.
The blind bomber is who he was called. Apparently, his vision wasn't very good, but his shooting was.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's insane. He's up there. Lenny Rosenbluth, up there, 54 to 57, National Player of the Year, first team All-America, AC Player of the Year. Like the dude was the dude before we had dudes. It was Lenny. Then you gotta get all the way to late 70s. Phil Ford, he's up there, National Player of the Year, first team All-America, AC Player of the Year, Olympic gold medal. He checks off all those boxes. Just didn't get a natty. James Worthy's up there, retired number 52. Of course, number 23. Michael Jordan's up there. Antoine Jameson's number 33, that's retired, National Player of the Year. And Tyler Hansborough, his number 50 is retired. He's the last National Player of the Year that Carolina has had. The last first team All-America that Carolina has had is Justin Jackson. And the last number that went up there, like I said, was Joel Berry. Tyler went up there, second team All-America and ACC Player of the Year. That was your senior year, right?
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah. So yeah,
and Justin Jackson and Tyler are 2 of 4 honored number 44s, along with Dennis Weisick and Larry Miller.
You're right. Yeah, there's multiple ones that are honored that were the same number. But yeah, those that's why you'll never see number 20, number 10, number 12, 52, 23, 33, or 50 on a court. Is there anyone on this roster as we get out of here for tonight that can crack this list? So we gotta.
Which list?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's into the front row. There's some really good college players right now. You know, RJ, obviously, as well as he's playing, I don't know that he's in the Player of the Year conversation.
Yeah, I don't think he's there yet. Yeah.
But you can, I mean, we haven't played many ACC games, but possible ACC Player of the Year or sneaking in that second team All-American. I think with the run he's on is, you know, you can say that. Can he continue it as teams start to focus on him more than Armando will be the big question. But yeah, I think he's in that conversation. And obviously Armando's done well enough in the past that ACC Player of the Year is not out for him either. You know, he played well against Florida State. I think, you know, if he starts turning it on again the way he has the past couple of years, you know, you can always have that conversation too. So
he's got,
I feel bad for him. He's so close. He's ACC Player of the Year, second place. If we win the national championship, he's going up. He's just this close. You just can't get his name up there.
It's going to be weird.
If it hadn't been for that injury, I think Carolina beats Kansas.
Yeah.
He's the MOP, and it's all said and done.
He probably wouldn't even be here. He probably would have left. You know, if all that happened, his storybook was done and gone. It's going to be weird if the all-time leading rebounder in North Carolina basketball history is not up in the rafters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it won't feel right. And I see people all the time like, well, he should have all these rebounds. He's been there for a billion years, blah, blah, blah. People forget Armando missed a lot of time with injury and freshman year. He was up and down. It wasn't like he came out averaging 15 rebounds a game from day one and just played for 5 years. And that's why he's got the record. That's
one of the conversations. I know Marcus Page on staff now Armando just passed him. I don't know, it's been about a month ago now in points. And he's like, yeah, took 5 years to get it. And then Armando always hits back with, he goes, it's games, not years.
Yeah, it's games, not years.
They're basically the same on games. So, there's all kinds of, ribbon and stuff like that in the locker room. But it will be interesting, though, a lot of these stats with the fifth year. How do colleges, NCAA, how do they, after these guys break all these stats in their fifth year, do you amend it to the best 4 years or a certain last 4 years? Like, it'll be interesting. Or do they just let it ride and never have a chance to break it? Like, games played. You got a whole extra year. You're never going to be able to touch that record.
It's almost like in reverse, like in the NFL, the records at the beginning were 14-game seasons or whatever. So, Jim Brown had the rushing record forever. And then they go to 16 games. You get an extra 2 games to do this. And, finally somebody breaks that. And now they're playing 17 games. So it's like, I see Tyreek Hill being mentioned, getting over 2,000 yards and all this stuff. I'm like, well, he's going to get an extra game to get there. And he's already on pace to get there.
That's continuing. This is ending.
Yeah.
Going forward, only get 4.
Now, I will say with Baycott, the thing with him, though, he did break the rebounding record last year.
No question.
Yeah, it's not like he stayed 5 years to get it. Like, he broke it in 4 years. So that, now,
no matter how they do it, they'll always have that one.
Yeah. Now this year they're making it so far away from everybody, nobody's going to catch him. So,
even still, you got to consider that Billy Cunningham only could play 3 varsity seasons, and his average per season and average per game, Mondo's not going to touch that. So you have to take that into account too. Not only 5 seasons, but compared to up until the mid 70s, you could only play 3
because you had a redshirt freshman year, right?
Right. Well, you played on the freshman team.
Yeah, freshmen didn't play. See, that's why RL is here, because I wasn't even thinking about that. And that's you got to keep that in mind too. A lot of these dudes only got to play 3 years, really. Some of them, like Jordan, played 3 years and was like top 5 in scoring or whatever it was. Like, you only played 3 years. So, like, it is what it is. But
that was always the conversation when Hansbrough started breaking those records. And then, he blew it out of the water at the end. But
yeah. But
he's doing 3 years though, because he's breaking those guys' record.
Well, again, with Baycott, he broke the record in 4. So anything he does after this is just gravy at this point. And you got so many kids from this extra COVID year that are getting this 5th year, where a lot of these schools are going to probably have records that are broken because of it. So I don't know. That's a good question, Tyler. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. They'll probably just be like, whatever. Let's go.
Somebody will. They got to wait for it to all play out first.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm trying to see. Carolina's next game is Friday, December the 29th against Charleston Southern.
College of Charleston. It's College of Charleston, and their net ranking is 346.
Is it College of Charleston? I thought. They got it as Charleston Southern on the on GoHills.com.
Yeah, it's Charleston Southern.
Charleston. So they're at home in the Smith Center. To be honest, we may not be back on until they play. And this will get Christmas and everything else going on. So we may be out next week and then back at the beginning of the following week after they've played. Charleston Southern. So we'll have that to discuss, and we'll have some more stuff too. And look for us. I'll have some social media channels built up by the time we do come back around, so you can find us specifically on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or wherever you may find us. Again, this is Bleav in Hills Hoops. I did not read this. I'm going to read it now. Bleav's going to be mad at me. I was supposed to do it in the first 2 minutes, and I waited to the very end. But a quick read from our sponsors at Bet Online. All the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off. Bet Online is your #1 destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. Head to the website today to get in the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use the promo code Bleav, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And that's where we'll end this episode of Bleav in Hills Hoops. If you like what you saw, like what you heard, let us know in the comment section on YouTube or at Facebook Watch. We'll be back probably off next week for the holiday. We'll be back after the Charleston Southern game with some more Hills Hoop talk. So for RL Bynum, for Tyler Zeller, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Bleav in Hills Hoops podcast here on Bleav Podcast Network, brought to you by Bet Online.